Okay, well, hello there. Hello. Hello, and how are you? I am fine. Let's see. Let's see. Hey, Jason. All right, 16 X's now. Awesome. So I haven't done these in a while, but I'm trying to get back in the habit. I'm trying to get back in the habit with the new year. I kind of missed them. I fell off the wagon of doing these because I mean, to be honest, I just felt like I was in a rut. I was in a rut, or the blogosphere was in a rut. I just wasn't finding a lot of stuff. But hopefully I'm back in the salad again, back in the gravy. We can find some stuff, and if not, yeah, we can find some other things to chat about probably. So hey, Ian. So I first just picked some stuff that I just came across my desk, if you will, and then I also have the OSR subreddit in a tab. And if folks you're out here, obviously this doesn't really apply if you're not here now, but if you were here in the chat and you've got something, send over the link. Shoot it over in the chat if it lets you, or drop it in Discord or wherever I can get to it, and I'll try to get to it. This first one was by Patchwork Paladin, and I thought this was pretty good, might be useful. It was called Coming to Dolmenwood from 5th edition. Running Dolmenwood when you usually run and play, or in, wait, sorry, let me start over. Coming to Dolmenwood from 5th edition. Running Dolmenwood when what you usually run and play is 5th edition. My group's experiences. This is actually from November 20. Apparently, it's a 6-minute read. We'll see about that. I and my friends belong to an excellent Discord server where we all try out different tabletop RPGs. We're all GMs who have mostly or only played 5th edition, but this year I've played 12 different systems. I don't have very much to drink, so hopefully this won't be a bad sign, but I don't know why my voice has been going every time I feel like I'm starting the stream. This is a limited edition cola seltzer water from Hal's. Let's see if that clears things up. Most of these games I played in 1 or 2 sessions, but I'm 18 sessions into running Game of Dolmenwood with a devoted group of players. Most of us agree it is the best game. Whoops. Let's see, hold on a minute. Most of us agree it is the best game we have ever played. Someone suggested to me I write a blog about the transition from 5th edition to Dolmenwood, so here it is. The Too Lazy Don't Read is the transition from our 4-hour group was worth it, but difficult. There are some points of friction and some new rules that I love. I have grown as a GM, and my players report the same thing. For me, I've learned why 5e doesn't handle the exploration pillar so well, and I definitely have a new way to play 5e as well. The main points of friction for a 5e group, in my opinion, are resolution mechanics, combat, detailed turn tracking, detailed inventory tracking, the emergent playstyle, the different community, and the lack of automation. That sounds like a lot. It's only the resolution, the combat, the turns, the inventory, the emergent playstyle. Like, boy, that sounds like everything. Obviously, that's not the case because they seem to be really enjoying it, but just funny the way that's phrased. Just sounds like a lot. The main things that we really like are the richness of the world. I am unable to really give you a sense of this, but it's amazing. Active player roles, the robust exploration rules, the robust dungeon crawling rules, random encounters at work, the use of retainers and animals as party members, which contains a lot of small roulettes, quote unquote, the fantastic spells, and the wonderful monsters. Let me say a bit more below on each of these points. Yes, please do. All right, so first up on the friction points, first bullet is resolution mechanics. There are no d20 ability or skill rolls and no DCs. The players either do something by cleverly describing it, or you judge their plan is not so clever and open to the whims of chance, in which case you pick up a d6 and roll. Bad plan, 1 in 6 chance. Okay plan, 3 in 6 chance. Good plan, 4 in 6 chance. Some characters do have skills, or untrained people would just fail, like thieves can pickpocket and bards know about monsters. These you roll a d6 versus a target that varies by character. I personally hate that this isn't a d20 roll. There's some math explanation, but it's very annoying. Ability checks are d6 as well versus a target of 4. There are bonuses. I still haven't gotten this part down pat. I'm curious about why they dislike this as opposed to the d20. It'd be interesting. I'd love to hear more about um, is it just because you just feel like you want more D20 rolls? Is it you want more granularity in your resolution? 5% chances versus 16% chances, or 16.66, whatever. I'd be curious as to what the thought, what their particular issue with the using of D6s versus another die is. Okay, and then let's see the next. So that was on the resolution mechanics. So one, the lack of, I guess, ability or skill rolls with no DC. So I guess the thing is that in BX and other games, there is kind of, we see this with wilderness stuff, right? You get lost or you don't, and there's not a DC. It's just 1 in 6, 2 in 6, 3 in 6 chance, and it's just kind of, you're rolling against the world. Either the world's rolling against you or you're rolling against the world. And I guess a good example would be elves with their chance to spot secret doors. 1 or 2 in 6, and that's it. Nothing else. Nothing changes for them. Nothing changes. The thing, it's just that ability kind of versus the world. It's pretty flat. I think as a kind of having in the back of your head or in your bag of tricks that you could say, like, okay, either their kind of example, it's a bad plan, you have a 1 in 6 chance. If it's a pretty good plan, 50-50 chance. If it's a good plan, 4 in 6 chance. I think that's actually pretty good. And I think, obviously, it just shows coming from 5th edition versus coming from OSR. Because if you're coming from a BX background, I think a lot of people go like, yeah, that totally makes sense, right? What a good rule of thumb. But for them, it was maybe insufficient. Ian says they vibe with this. They chafe against some arbitrary X and 6 resolution mechanics too. Okay, so there's that. So, the skills, again, uses D6s, which is the same as their other thing uses, but some people want the D20s. And, I would tell this person, granted, it's a D6 system, but my do anything D6 gives you a lot more sort of resolution and granularity in your skill checks if you want them. Available from a fine bookseller, aka Itch or Drive-Thru RPG, near you. Second bullet point is the combat is so different. All right, surprise, 2 and 6 for both sides, just right off the bat, every combat. Yes. I guess I don't want to get too far in the weeds, because really a surprise is not about combat, it's just about the encounter. It doesn't have to be. Just because you rolled surprise doesn't mean it's combat. So this is another one where I go, I'd love to unpack that a little bit. Side initiative. Roll each round, then everyone moves their tokens, casts their spells, takes their shots, wallops on the enemy, then it's the other side's turn. Fun on a VTT because you can all move at once. Combat is a nice, normal D20 plus bonus, and roll over your armor class. Everyone rolls at once. No more waiting a long time for your turn. 1 action each. So they like that kind of simplicity, and definitely it's going to move quickly. Hey, Matt. Morale, monsters might run away. This is great fun. Okay, well, that's not a friction point, right? Combat is freaking dangerous. Clever players avoid it when possible. Yeah. Also, some of this seems like it's kind of veering away from friction points, but I'm guessing that the real friction point is maybe just that combat's very different. Not that the things in the combat are good or bad. It seems like they like morale. I think the danger is interesting. Doesn't seem like they dislike it, but it's just very different. Let's see, the other, getting on to the next pain points. Turn tracking, didn't expect that or know what to do with it. Now I make rows of boxes on my prep notes. Adding time to the dungeon crawls is outstanding and essential. All right, so you just wasn't aware of it. It is a thing to track, but it's pretty easy to track. The playstyle is emergent. I love it, but it's really different than what I was used to from 5th edition. There's no, this happens first and this. There's just, here's this location, and here's these random encounters, and here's some potential objectives, or make your own, go forth. The community is really different. I didn't fully appreciate that I would have to learn many new terms and sources. It's been a fun voyage of discovery, but yeah, wasn't expecting that. Where do you find adventures? Has a whole different set of answers than for 5e. I guess so. I mean, drive-through, kind of the answer for both, right? Or I guess, or itch, maybe. But yeah, that's probably true. Something I definitely didn't think about the community aspects. And I can appreciate that it must be daunting for a 5e person to come into kind of a Dolmenwood / OSE kind of OSR space. I think it is sometimes I feel daunted by going back to a 5e form just because it's been so long since I've really mucked around with it that, yeah, it feels like a very different world. All right, so now we have the automation isn't there. No D&D Beyond. This is a more manual game. I use Owlbear Rodeo for our VTT, and we have some shared Google Sheets. Well, I think that one's solvable. I think different VTTs are automated. Obviously, Owlbear Rodeo is not, but I think you can use Fantasy Grounds or Roll20 or whatever the other one is. I'm forgetting. You have some options. It's I don't think it's that there's no. I mean, there is no D&D Beyond for Dolmenwood. That's for sure. But some of that I think is it's just a matter of which tools you're using. And then the last one, inventory tracking, essential in my opinion to the robust mechanics, but without automation is a lot to get right when you first begin. Yeah, that's true. I mean, you gotta just play loose. Play loose. If you get some stuff wrong, you get some stuff wrong. Now on to the awesome things. Player roles. But players take active roles in every session. The caller, like my co-DM, organizes the combat, makes the party work together. Cartographer draws the maps of our dungeons. You heard me right. I describe and they draw. So much more engaging. The chronicler takes all the session notes and maintains the archive, in our case, a wildly comprehensive website of awesomeness. And then, also a quartermaster handles all the inventory and the shopping lists, and the maestro handles session music. Oh, I hadn't heard of the maestro. That's a cool idea if you've got somebody. The next bullet point, retainers, mules, dogs, a Dolmenwood, I was going to say Dungeon World. A Dolmenwood party is assumed to be 6 characters, but they don't have to be player characters. We are currently a party of 5 characters, 2 retainers, 3 dogs, and a giant toad devoted to our elf ranger. I love all these extra characters. Slot-based inventory. This has lots of positive consequences, and although it's a pain to set up, it forces the players to make choices, and my players like it. These work well with travel and camping rules. Optimization happens of the inventory, not of the character sheet, and it's fun for us all. Next one is a fantastic range of tiny little quote-unquote roulettes, as in like mini rules, for the vast array of pipe leaf, wine, herbs, mushrooms, other comestibles, dogs, mules, etc., etc., etc. Nearly everything has an effect, and the effect is to stimulate exploration and interaction with the world. Wonderful. The spells. You'll remove the colorful spells over my dead body. All right? The monsters are so good and so easy. And then finally, random encounters at work. Oh, I am a big, big convert to random encounters now. All right, well, that's good. That's good to see. Good to hear, I guess. And then, let's see, so there's another header here, ordering. Also, to answer your questions, no, the books aren't out in hardback form yet, but yes, you can pre-order them, and yes, you can take delivery of the final PDFs now, and yes, you can just order PDFs. All right, so that's if you want to, if this convinced you to get Dolmenwood, there you go on that. Using another system, there's a big thread on the Shadowdark Discord about converting Dungeon World for play in Shadowdark. Others have discussed even converting it to 5e. The world is so awesome, goes the thinking, but it seems hard to learn the system. Of the two, Shadowdark is a better choice, in my opinion, and we have thought of converting and even starting a conversion, but as we've grown more used to the system, our group has decided that we like the Dolmenwood system, a variant of Old School Essentials, which is a variant of D&D Basic from 1981, because it is really rich, while Shadowdark focuses on quickness and ease of play. Your miles may vary. Shadowdark contains the lack of skills and dungeon turns, but retains a d20 resolution mechanic and individual, though simplified initiative, and the monsters would work. But it doesn't have all the little rulings and things that kind of make Dolmenwood what it is, and you have to use the Dolmenwood Player's Book anyway for all the cool player races and spells and legends of the saints. So there you go. And I think also, well, I guess in other self-promo news, I have a little supplement for Shadowdark, which inserts some more robust wilderness mechanics than Shadowdark runs with. Shadowdark does use a d6 in some spots, so it's not totally d20. I think the other thing is, I forget who I was talking to. Might have been talking to Daniel last night, who was talking about someone else who had started using Shadowdark for a campaign, but then switched to Old School Essentials. I don't know if they were switching back to it or whatever, and I think it was because of just that Shadowdark does lack some things of completeness. That when you're really looking at, I want complete rules for everything, that Shadowdark does lack some things here and there, or if it doesn't lack it completely, it maybe doesn't have as much depth to it in spots. So, I think I don't know the Dolmenwood system. I've only read that Quick Start book, which was a while ago now. I think it's pretty similar to OSE with some extra things and maybe some slight changes. And yeah, I mean, BX as an overall system has proven to be very robust and last a long time. And it's definitely, I think anything that hews close to that's going to pretty much give you everything you need. And the nice thing is, if you're already in that BX ecosystem, more or less, then you have all the different blogs and content and everything that's been going on since 1981 onwards, including being able to really easily port stuff from AD&D First Edition or AD&D Second Edition or OD&D. So it really is a nice nice spot. Not that it's impossible with Shadow Dark, but it's just a matter of how much. Not that I don't even think it's really be a ton more work, but it's like, well, if I already have something and I don't need to do much work at all, why go to something that I'm going to need to put more work in? But that was from Patchwork Paladin. That was a fun read. Spoke to Ian. Yeah, I'm definitely going to be curious as time goes on and more folks are going to be using Shadow Dark and even some of these other systems like Dolmen Wood, the whole shebang, right? And not kit bashing it with other stuff because you only have limited. I'm going to be really interested to see what people's experiences are, and maybe some rules are going to be better suited for certain campaigns or others. I do think that Shadow Dark is sort of skewed towards dungeon crawling, which is absolutely fine. But I think if you're going to be playing in a game that's mostly wilderness, then not that it's a bad choice, but it might not be as great a choice as something else, which just is more set up for kind of wilderness stuff. Okay, where are we now? We're at the Methods and Madness blog. This is from just this past weekend, Sunday, January 5th, 2025. 2 uses for each ability score. One thing that bothers me about D&D, most editions share the same problem, is that it feels like I need at least 2 different uses of each ability score. For example, if I have a Charisma 15 plus 1, I feel I need to have a use for the score 15 and also for the modifier plus 1. Otherwise, why would I need 2? Especially when I'm trying to keep things minimalist starting by the character sheet. And then we have a bracketed parenthetical here. Of course, you could just get rid of the score, which I'm also tempted to do, although I like having compatibility with other D&D games. I think one reason for the score is so that you get 2 steps for every drop or additive store. So if you're plus 1, if you just had bonuses, you just go plus 1, plus 2, plus 3, plus 4, but really it's plus 1, plus 1, what, I don't know, it's what, 10, I mean, and it changes on addition, right? But I guess I think pardon if I'm off, but it's either going to be it's like 10 to 13 is plus 1, then it's 14 to 16 or 17 plus 2, and then I think maybe just 18 plus 3. And I think even it might be a little bit different depending on which ability score you're looking at, but you get these grades. So if you're moving up and down, and granted, I mean, the kind of the irony is there aren't that many things that actually have you move up and down because you don't tend to have those ASI type things every level where you're adding to those. There are some abilities that will subtract, some spells that will do things like that, and maybe poisons or other effects might also drop your scores. And there's the odd magic fountain that lets you maybe add something to your stat, but they are pretty static. So I can see where they're coming from, but I think ultimately, that's kind of why they're doing it. Or at least that's one of the main reasons why. Ian says, we're coming up to the point where he's going to ask their players if they want to keep playing Shadowrun and try something new. Ian, do you feel like, if you could put your fingers on the pulse, or what is your idea? Do you think your particular table is satisfied with Shadow Dark and happy with it? Or do you think they're wanting to, they ready to move off? Or, I mean, and sometimes that's nothing to do with the system. Sometimes you're just like, yeah, I could just do something different. Variety being the spice of life and all that. All right, so he's got a picture of some table scores. Oh, this is from AD&D, from the Monster Manual. As you can see above, it's not difficult to find several uses for strength. Other abilities are trickier unless you use ability checks. Yeah, ability checks is the other kind of big one, right? And fair enough, this is a decent solution. My issue with ability checks is that they don't take level into account. So a 10th level fighter is as likely to avoid a pit trap, an early example of a dexterity check, as a first level one. This is also a terrible use of dexterity because it feels like a saving throw but has a completely different method and rationale. One compromise that could work is what I suggested. Okay, fine, I'm not going to go to that other article. Roll under skills is an alternate method to deal with skills that makes PCs more competent and their ability scores more relevant. This has lots of advantages, but it's slightly more complicated than simply rolling under ability. Also, if you're rolling for easy stuff, which I don't recommend, it will make PCs look bad. Even with ability checks, what do you quote-unquote check charisma for if there's already a influence, because you have the modifiers, influence reactions, on reactions, retainers, etc. Even if you don't like ability checks, things get even more difficult. Ideally, I'd want every point of every ability to serve some purpose to every character. I mean, I guess. I don't know that I need all that. There's a fun. I'll save it for the end of this piece because I think there is an interesting discussion to be had, but it's kind of not directly about this. If you don't, okay, so just saying that abilities give extra XP for certain classes is not enough. Let me give some quick examples. So strength, the score equals encumbrance. Modifier is a bonus hit and damage. Constitution score, you can lose con when you have 0 con. 0 con means death. Modifier is a bonus hit points. Dexterity score, no idea. And maybe unarmed AC when you're unencumbered. Too many ifs. Modifiers bonus to AC may be ranged. Wisdom score could serve as sanity points. Modifier bonus to save versus spells. These are making them up, so it's not they're not pulling this from a particular source. Charisma score, maybe some kind of luck points. Modifier bonus to social. Intelligence score, no idea either. Modifier bonus to languages. And then he's basically asking. So this is kind of more of a asking about it. So what was I gonna say? Oh, Matt says, don't know much about Shadow Dark. Seems like basic 5e. Is that correct? It's taking the 5e. I mean, I don't know. We keep, it's funny because you could say Shadow Dark is taking 5e, but really Shadow Dark is it's just the D20. I feel like it's just taking the D20 generic mechanic. I don't know. Maybe Ian or somebody who's more knowledgeable in that score could tell me all the things it's pulling down from 5th edition. It doesn't feel like all that much other than just like, yeah, D20. I mean, the D20 system prior to 5th edition, like 3.5, also was mostly, or had moved almost all the way to D20 for everything. But, basically a D20 based system, pretty much, though, like I said, there are some D6 mechanics. I think I saw when I was looking through the rules. I was like, oh, there's the D6 pops up, but I wasn't thinking about it because I thought they just converted everything to D20. So I was a little bit surprised that I ran into a D6 check. It was a game master facing check, I think, not a player check, if I'm remembering correctly. I mean, it's just D20 stuff, basic. So, similar enough to 5th edition that people can grok that easily with more of an old school feel. So I think that's why people look at it as a great, if you're stepping from 5th edition down or over to OSR, that it's a nice bridge because you're getting kind of OSR feels and some of that simplicity in terms of your characters and in terms of things like light and resources that it's bringing back to the fore of, oh, hey, these things are important. Your light is important. Your resources are important, but it's keeping things simple and using the D20 as another way to keep it simple, but also keep it familiar to 5e folks. The simple point is kind of interesting because I think that 5e is kind of complicated and complex, or maybe complicated is the better word. So I feel like you don't need to simplify some of the stuff to OSR, kind of generic OSR stuff, all that much because it's already simpler than 5e. But I think having everything be D20 and just kind of smoothing out, it just makes it a nice transition. That's kind of where Shadow Dark fits. And I guess there was also, I keep forgetting what's 5 Torches Deep, I think was the name of it, that also is in a similar niche, but it seems like Shadow Dark has just kind of bumped 5 Torches Deep as the OSR 5e kind of bridging game spot. So what I was going to say about this is obviously when you're running a game, I feel like a lot of stuff that we do as GMs is for us. Like, I don't think a lot of players really care that much. Maybe it's just I'm skewed because I'm just staring at this game too long, but it never bothered me. They're like, oh, my strength is 15, but I have +1, and I don't use that number very much. It's like it might come up every once in a while if maybe you're doing some kind of pro wrestling test of strength, and the GM will go, ooh, what's your strength? And I'm like, 15. And he's like, darn it, my fighter is only 13, so you overpower them at the test of strength or something like that. Or maybe it comes up every once in a while, you run into a weapon or something that needs, you need to have strength 15 to lift, and you're like, haha, I've got strength 15, that kind of thing. It didn't the lack of like, oh, I gotta have, like, it didn't matter. But as a GM, as a designer, I think you can get so just in the weeds and all this stuff. And sometimes I think, and I'm not saying that they're in this spot though, I might say like, hey man, I get what drives you, and if this kind of thing drives you, then you want to do it because that's your whole interest level. And, I don't want to say like, just don't do this. No, see where it leads. But I also think that like, man, I don't know, as a player anyway, like, I don't care. And if having every point and everything, do something for every class adds a whole bunch of complexity on top of it, I keep doing that. I don't need it. you know, what it's not a fruitful use of crunch for me. But we all have ours. I mean, this may be theirs, where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going down this. This is my, you know, this is their rabbit hole. Maybe my rabbit hole is wondering about all these settlements on a map and how they all kind of relate to each other. Where someone's going to be going, hey man, nobody cares. Nobody's checking the town, which I believe. Nobody's checking the town for how many villages surrounding it. Nobody cares about that, right? But it helps me and it makes sense to me and I'm interested in it, so I delve into it, right? So we all have those, but it's always good to kind of check yourself a bit, especially if you're really going down deep into something. That, you know, give it a look and say like, hey man, is this giving me, you know, is the juice worth the squeeze? And you know, granted, I think it's super important and everything, but if nobody else does, then maybe I could just let it go, or maybe I just need to satisfy my own curiosity, and then I can put it in a drawer somewhere. This is called Grow Your Own DMing Clinic. And this is posted by Seed of Worlds. I think, is that the name of it? I think so. Yep, seedofworlds.blogspot.com. I will try to add, oh shit, I've been closing the tabs as I go. I'll have to go back and grab those other two and I'll throw them in. Throw them in after sometime later in the comments or in the show description. Okay. Grow Your Own DMing Clinic. We ran a DM clinic at one of our Saturday daytime sessions. We've been kicking around the idea of more experienced DMs within the society coaching newer ones. There have been more of a ride along. There has been more of a ride along mechanic where someone would sit behind the screen with a DM and see basically the sausage get made from that side of things. That's pretty interesting. I thought to focus on the prep and tricks of the trade side of things and put out the word I was going to host such a session. I got a pretty decent turnout. 7 folks turn up, of which 3 of them I would have classed as fairly serious DMs in their own regard. Good for me, as there's always something to learn, and I to more chair the conversation rather than lecture people. I am writing it up as per the Record Your Hobby Experience best practices as a pretty solid reflection of the active questions of working DMs within a pretty busy group. All right, this might be interesting. To try to make sure that we got through to everyone when we joined, I just had everybody give me the topics that they wanted covered. So the list in no particular order from folks was encounter design and making it fair, coming from someone who has been of late running Dungeon of the Mad Mage. The balance of sandbox versus railroading, realism versus expectations. Where the players did not want to engage with what is logically present in the world. Okay. How to end combats where the combat has stopped being fun, but the outcome is not in doubt. Social encounters. Should you play that in initiative, how to make sure that everybody gets their time in social encounters. What is enough prep, and how do you make sure that you're prepping just the important stuff? Advice on running prepared adventures, prepping pre-written adventures for taking to the table, and then similarly structuring notes on how to do that. Random encounters, how you come up with them, how you run them, how they basically fit into the whole thing. Pacing and just how to make sure a session ends on time. Not overdoing the amount of content you are covering in a game. And then encounter lethality and what to do where people were proving hard to kill. What do you do when you can't kill them? Why won't you die? I'm wondering if this is very 5e, folks. These questions seem sort of 5e, folks, but we'll see. I'm not sure. We're not getting editions here. But Dungeon of the Mad Mage is definitely a 5th edition, right? If I'm not mistaking it. That is a 5th edition module or adventure. So we'll see. All right. Let's get down to the text here. As we talk through the combat side of things and encounter design, our core theme was giving people enough information to make the choice to get into an unfair encounter, being aware that this is a risky business. On the one end, it was if you give people a blank sandboxy map, then give them some rumors, give them some hints about which bits are dangerous, which bits are not, so they can decide where they want to go. The other end was consensus that if you enter, say, the Dungeon of the Mad Mage and are not paranoid, checking around every corner, the fact that you can turn a corner and run into a zombie beholder is to be expected. Dungeons are dangerous. That should be understood. Hey, Krister. The actual lethality of an encounter is basically a function of what people sign up for. If they came for combat grind, then lethal encounters are to be expected, and I would personally support people getting killed or getting close to TPKs every now and then, just to show that it's possible to understand that the danger is real as opposed to paper tigers. Tweaking up and down hit points within the min and max was definitely a range of play with for challenge management. I feel like this must be very 5e centric, because I would not. This is not the kind of things not the sort of stuff I would say if I was doing OSR, folks. mostly, I think the answers would be pretty different. Not so much on the, like the lethality is not. I wouldn't depend on whether they came for. I don't know. I don't even know what that means. If they came for a combat grind, then they get it. But then if they didn't come for I don't know. I don't know. Anyhow, let's see. My personal approach is to assign the hit points at roll of initiative as a view of how dangerous this monster they run into is, and then let the combat play out as it plays out. Others were adjusting on the fly in the combat within the same range, depending on if things were dragging on or whatever. I think the thing is, when things are dragging, just get out. It's dragging. It's going to be apparent to everybody, and it's not even just a meta thing. If you're, you're running to an alleyway and you pick up a stick, and there's some guy in full plate mail with a tower shield and a I don't know, a sword, and you go whacking into that thing, and you manage to dip and dodge, and maybe you're holding your own in that way, just jumping from side to side in this alley, but you are not making any headway on that night. You're not making any headway on that night, and you also know that chances are you're going to get whacked. You're dipping and dodging. You one little slip in the mud or the ice, since we're in the winter. One slip on the ice and you trip, or you just a little bit slow and you're just getting cleaved into. So you figure out how to get. Yeah, what'd you do? If you think you can get away from the night, you probably turn back and run. But maybe you've exhausted yourself, so then you say, you know what, I gotta give up, and hopefully I can hand this guy my wallet and he'll leave me alone. I think there's a similar thing in the combat. If the combat's in a slog where nobody's making headway, you gotta have a pretty good sense of, man, I've been rolling well, and I need to roll super well, which translates in fiction to basically meaning I need to get the perfect angle and the perfect blow to make contact and do damage, and I'm not doing it. You know that. So just to have them use their brains, and I don't care if it's an animal or the most intelligent being in the galaxy, they're making those same calculations. And they're going to say, like, nope, I'm out. You ever play with your cat and the cat realizes that it can't win? Either, then the cat leaves. It's like, nope, I'm out. Same thing. I'm out. So you don't need to let it drag. Now, granted, I think that's a less of a problem in OSR type games because they tend to have quicker combats, but there's you don't have to let it drag out. And if it's clear the monster is getting thrashed and it's just taking either a longer time or a shorter time, just fast forward to you thrash the monster, or the monster gives up, or the monster runs away. You don't play out the string just to play out the string. Okay, on the flip side of that, where encounters are slogs, where people are down early and just doing death saves, or they've been locked out by stun mechanisms, or for whatever plot-specific reasons, for the whatever plot-specific, no. Where players have no decision or action to take on their turn, that is less fun, and where possible, something to be minimized. Yeah, they've got to be talking 5e. Or Pathfinder, I suppose. On closing out combat, we talked about how once the risk is gone, once victory is assured, then just wrap it up. Yep, if there's no longer a risk to the players, then stop rolling dice. If you manage to run all the skeletons into a pit trap, they have no chance of getting out, and you're just going to pelt rocks until they all die. Drop out of initiative and don't do the boring grind just because. Yes, precisely. The question of social encounters was an interesting one. We talked a bit about the reaction roll and the hostile and different friendly range, and how you can move people up and down through that range through social interaction and so on, but to set the maximum that even a great roll can get you. This avoids the persuasions mind control nonsense that sometimes happens. Even a natural 20 isn't going to get the king to hand you his crown. He might think you're hilarious and view you well, but there is a limit to how much even the best rolls can get you. An interesting point was social encounters under initiative to make sure everyone gets a chance to speak, or hand off their speaking time if they wish, to ensure a fair share of the spotlight. Yeah, so yeah, that's definitely 5e based. It's still interesting to read, but I didn't realize. I always think of all the blogspot stuff as being kind of old school, so might have been led astray by that. I wish they would have. Maybe I would have liked to hear what they had to say about the sandbox versus railroading. Though I think this is a false. It's not really the. I don't know. You can end up in railroading situations, micro or macro, in all kinds of spots, right? In railroading, it's just the term when it's bad. If we're talking kind of narrative, or I don't know what would be the non-pejorative term, but that might be a better one. The realism versus expectations is interesting too, where the players don't want to engage with what is logically present in the world, but then I guess do they have to? I'm curious, what is the thing that's in the world that's logically there that the party because I guess implied in that statement is that they need to engage with it, but they don't want to. And I'm curious, well, what is it? Is it something really general? Like, no, we don't want to go in the wilderness. It's like, well, how are you going to get to the dungeon, man? That is not something you can skip over. Otherwise, it's, at least for me, anyways, like that's half the game is gone. Or is it something that's a small portion, but maybe it's interesting to you as the GM, but to the party it's less so. But you're kind of pushing it, but they don't need to. It's not preventing them from adventuring or making progress and whatever. It's just kind of this element that you want them to interact with. So I would have liked to heard more about that. They covered the combats, social encounters. I think initiative is good actually. You could have initiative and just use your charisma bonus on your initiative score, so that if you want to give a make sure, or not make sure, but you want to give a chance to the folks who have high charisma to speak first, but it doesn't preclude other folks from getting shoved to the front now and again. What is enough prep, and how do you make sure you're prepping just the important stuff? There's no real answer to that, unfortunately. I wish there was some answer you could give people, but it's how much to prep is going to be super personal, and even the important stuff is going to change, because you may be someone who all you need is the name of a monster, and you'll be able to run an encounter with that monster because you just have a really good sense in your head. Oh, goblins, and I know goblins in my world, and so you can just tell me goblins, and I got everything else. I don't need that. Someone else might be the important stuff that they need to prep for a goblin encounter because they need all that stuff. But something else, maybe I don't know, a faction. They don't need the factional side. I got the factional stuff down. I know what these different groups are doing and what they're going to do and blah blah blah. But then this other thing, I don't know. So it's too. Unfortunately, you just got to play and prep, and when you fall short in your prep, and you just figure out over time which stuff that you, for the way you run games and the way your brain works and everything else that kind of you need. You can give hints and clues, but it's really kind of a journey of self-discovery. The advice of running prepared adventures would have been cool. Random encounters, that's cool. All right, that was that one. Oops, there we go. All right, this is from the Whose Measure God Could Not Take. Wilderness Crawl Notes, Fellowship of the Ring. I recently had the joy of listening to Fellowship of the Ring in audiobook format and took the opportunity to take notes about the journey the characters took as they traveled from the Shire to Tol Brandir, where the book ends. Specifically, I wanted to compare the journey to my country is dungeon idea and see how a tale famous for its description of adventurous travel differs from the experience I have been setting up. At the end of this post, I'll reproduce the notes I made, but I expect them to be only of passing interest. Instead, here are the observations I made. So this, I'm not familiar with the country is dungeon idea, but I think this should be fun. All right, so first, Middle Earth is big. Using my ad hoc and approximate standard for converting a continuous journey into distinct regions, the party saw 20 to 25 areas while trying to efficiently cover ground in a long journey. If they were trying to fully explore each region like a party, quote-unquote, clearing a dungeon, the full Fellowship country crawl could easily be 100 to 200 keyed areas, ignoring true dungeons and adventure locations like Moria that would want to be keyed themselves. My mega wilderness crawl, quote-unquote, is probably as small as possible to try to recreate this feel, and it feels notably smaller than Middle-earth. 2. Tolkien makes many of the quote-unquote doors between regions distinct landmarks in their own right. Passes, gates, and rapids. See love. This is probably something worth emulating. 3rd, there are a good mix of regions we could categorize as being of the empty, monster, treasure, trap, and specific types. Most of the traps serve to confound and challenge travel through the wilderness crawl, cutting off routes or requiring some expertise or preparation to overcome. 4. Gandalf and Aragorn understand that the lands they travel through. They can distill their reasoning for the routes they take to relatively simple considerations that are easy to follow, avoiding dangerous places and choosing which obstacles they want to risk. There are enough dangers that it is clear that there is no totally safe path to pick. 5th, there is pressure on the party. They face many hostile random encounters, and there is a strong, well-framed reason that so much threatens them. A malevolent force is actively attempting to impede them, giving the wilderness crawl a quote-unquote mythic underworld, unquote, hostility. All right. So there you have Get a better version. Okay, so it's still kind of cut. So we got the Shire. I guess he's got all these regions with, I guess, the kind of doorways. Is that IDK for I don't know? Half of area door gets the I don't know. We got roll hands down there, and so they're kind of each of these. It's kind of cool. Okay, route notes. I'm certain this is not all accurate, but I believe it is accurate enough for me to learn principles from. Indented entries are mentioned routes or routes the Fellowship intended to take, but ultimately did not. For connections between regions, I used D door for normal connections, S for secret connections, R for connections that required a ranger or elf, X for block connections, and L for locked ones. So Hobbiton, there's a door to Buckland, and these are all right metaphorical doors. Buckland, there's the door is the East Gate. So there's a secret door, the Brandybuck Hedge Gate to the West Old Wood. The West Old Wood, as do so the Old Man Willow kind of shows that. What is X? Oh, blocked connections. So Old Man Willow blocks off the different connections. There's a door to the Barrow Downs. There's a door to Bree. There's a door to the outlying villages. There's a door to the main road and a door to the wooded country. There is a, what is R? Oh, you need a ranger elf for the Midgewater Marshes. Yeah, some of these I feel like, I guess it's an interesting way of phrasing it and doing it, because I don't think that if the hobbits didn't have Aragorn, I don't think they could not have gotten to the Midgewater Marshes. I don't think it was like you can't. It might be more that it would be very difficult to get out, or they just would have been lost in the Midgewater Marshes. Maybe the difference doesn't really matter. But when thinking of doors, and you say only a ranger can get in here, I think it's less that than you. And I think if they didn't have a ranger, I think they could have gotten out. But it is interesting when you're, I guess, overlaying this sort of structure, this kind of dungeonish structure on top of what is more open ended, because using your sort of hex crawl procedures, you could probably get out. You might get out going the wrong way. You might get out, bumbling around, but you're not trapped in a room. You can leave or attempt to leave. But anyway, we got D, which is the regular door to the Weathertop, basically. D to the main road. D to the wilderness again. D to the last bridge. D to Troll Country, a blocked route through hills and passages. The old path, locked door, the Fort of Bruinen. And then Rivendell, end of book 1. Rivendell, door to wooded country, door to swamps. So yeah, so you go through Holland, keep going, right? Moria, locked. They unlock it. Going down, going down, going down, going down, going down. Okay. And they've got some more. All right. So it's a pretty neat idea. I'm not sure that I would use this myself. I mean, I'd probably need to read more of the articles on it. I think it's interesting. I do like I think the idea of having these kind of gates are nice things. I don't think I wouldn't treat them as doors necessarily, but they are, I mean, they're those landmarks. Another way to look at those, all those things are landmarks. And if you're looking at your hex crawl and you're like, oh, we need to make for this place, it's a landmark, right? And so these are these locations that you can shoot for. Because I think you could also look at this as that kind of you have all your hexes here, open spaces, and then you're hitting your points. And instead of looking at them like doors and things, it's a lot of these points. And then sure, there are certain, you could look at it and say that there are certain things that are more difficult because if you don't have a ranger or whatever. And yeah, there are certain things that are absolutely locked. For example, Rivendell, when they're not going to let evil in there, so that does have like a real power attachment. But in other words, it's almost just a skill thing. Your ranger is just better at this, or they know it better. But it's not like the hobbits could not go into the marshes or absolutely could not get out, though they might not. Ian says they had to step away. Oh, you asked my table if okay. So Ian, going back to the question about if their table is happy with Shadowdark, and he says they seem to be, but they've also decided to try something new for the past 4 system too. I get it. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that goes into the kind of system choice, right? But cool that they're happy with Shadowdark. I'm curious if there's going to be how much, because I'm going to be going to Page tomorrow, Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo, which is right outside. Right, I guess it's in Metro Philadelphia, but it's not. I don't think it's in the city of Philadelphia. And I know Kelsey Dion's going to be there as well as some other people. So I'm curious if there's going to be a bunch of shadow darkness going on. I, they use a ticketing system for games, and I'm not getting any tickets or anything. They weren't kind enough to, when I asked at the last second if they had any kind of media badge stuff, they were kind enough to get one for me. So I'll be bouncing around. I won't be able to play any games. I'm also gonna have my daughter with me, so that'll be pretty interesting, and I'll see what kind of she wants to do. But I'm hoping at least peep in and see what the Shadow Dark scene is like. But I've never been to Page before, so I have no idea what to expect from any of it. And if you're going to Page, come find me. Come say hey. Okay, so this was. Should I go on the hot tab or the new tab? I'll go on the new. Well, now we're just checking out ROSR. I'm happy to, if you guys got any questions, I'm happy to take anything from chat as opposed to trolling Reddit. So just type away. Otherwise, I'm gonna see what else we have in the Reddit sphere. Okay, this might be an interesting question. All right. This is posted by most underscore guilty underscore spark. How to adjudicate traps while crawling in a dungeon. The Too Lazy Don't Read version is, should I roll for PCs to detect traps while crawling, ask for a check from the player, use some form of passive perception, similar to 5e, simply tell the player leading the party when they're approaching a trap or something else entirely. And then, okay, so they, I guess a bunch of people have responded, so we'll just read the original and then see what some of the responses are. And then maybe add our own. Some context, I'm running Rapin Athuk using Shadow Dark. My players are mapping as they go, so we're predominantly in Theater of the Mind. I'm finding in Rapin Athuk there are a load of pit traps which occupy the complete width of the corridors, i.e. if the leader doesn't spot it, they're likely to trigger it and tumble in. I'm getting a bit stumped on how to handle these, if I'm honest. I can't decide on a solution which doesn't swing too hard in favor of challenge or metagaming, so I'd be grateful for some advice. OSC gives some good examples of the search procedure when looking for traps. Shadow Dark rules are fairly light on this topic. Essentially, if the player searches in the right place, they find the trap. But in both cases, this guidance refers specifically to a telegraphed trap in a room or something, as opposed to something sitting in a corridor, which is being described in fairly two-dimensional terms as route from one place to the other. I mean, it's still... I don't think that really... I don't know why you would look at the corridor as being different from a room in that regard. The room has dimensions. There's something that's placed there. It's no different than it was placed in a room, in my opinion. All right, so we have some options that they think are appropriate. Ask the player to roll when they approach the trap. This feels too metagaming to me. As soon as I call for a check, the player knows something's up. I roll on the player's behalf. This removes the meta knowledge, but also removes agency. Use a passive perception type mechanic. Tell the player leading the party that, there's some slightly discovered flagstones ahead with more noticeable gaps between them. I'm finding it quite difficult to work out which method I should use. Option 4, which is just tell the party leader that there's something going on. Feels like you're removing all the challenge and agency from this aspect of the game, but provides the verisimilitude of a competent dungeoneer looking for traps. Option 1 feels too metagamey. On a failed check, the players are just going to halt their characters because they know what's up. They know something was here that they missed. Option 2 and 3 just take the player out of the snare entirely, which maintains the mystery of exploration, but probably isn't as satisfying. So my questions are this. Which of the approaches do you use in your old school games? If none of the above, which approach do you take and how to execute at the table? I don't think there's anything wrong with a Shadow Dark. This is one of those things that where Shadow Dark is basically giving you the same kind of advice I think that OSR games in general would give you, which is if the players are doing the thing, give them the thing. If you've got your 10-foot pole and you're swinging it from side to side looking for tripwires, then if there's a tripwire, you find it. If you're moving carefully, you're not running, then I would say, yeah, you're going to give them this colored flagstones ahead, and once they kind of recognize that pattern, then they'll see all the pits. The funny thing is, or I would say a fun thing with those kinds of traps, is if you're really playing the dungeon, not as some kind of one-way narrative piece, but as a space, some of the fun is not that they don't detect the traps as they're moving in, but then when they have to retreat or they're running away from a monster, and now those same traps are still there, and they're no longer moving carefully. And who knows how well they've mapped it. And maybe, like a lot of folks will do, or at least I've seen this, where if you're running, you don't get to use your map, so that you can't look and see, oh my gosh, there are 8 pit traps here. You're running, so you don't know. And then those traps are still there and going off. So just because they detected them going in and are able to avoid those um, the pressure plates or whatever doesn't mean that it's out of it. And I think it's good to reward the players. There's so much stuff going on in the dungeons. The pit traps are not some, oh my gosh, this is why they're here for the pit trap. Like it's not. Let them have the pit traps. They can still be obstacles. And I think you get that fun thing with, okay, they've gone down this corridor, they've passed 4 pit traps, and then you roll that wandering creature check, and you get something nasty that's now in front of them, and now they're like I said moving backwards, and now they got to deal with those traps in a different way, where they don't have the luxury of being able to all dip and dodge around the pressure plate, or they can be smart and try to use the pressure plate to lure some monster and then hit the pressure plate and then trigger the trap in front of them, or however the pressure plates work, and do something like that. So I wouldn't worry about it too much in terms of that stuff. Let's see. I just want to say who are let's see a couple of the top comments. So this one's got 6 upvotes from Dragon333. I'm currently running Rapid Thuk and I switch it up, which of course keeps them guessing. I use marching order to decide quite a bit. Put the paladin in full plate up front, you have the advantage of an AC 18 leading the way, but someone unskilled in finding traps. You put the assassin or monk up front, different story. I give a bunch of descriptors, some of which go nowhere, and some are rewards for close listening. We were playing online, and I use Google Meets and Schmeppy for maps and dice rolls. I don't know if this helps. Okay. And then underscore Scree underscore, also got 6 votes, says, I think I'd probably break it down into sections of skills / exposure level. My players can face first into a pit trap. My players ran face first into a pit trap yesterday, despite telegraphing what they considered to be their own fault, so I'd take it as a win. The dungeon is currently getting harder for them, and there are more traps in the future, so here's how I'm handling it. I'm slowly introducing them to the concept, just making it clear I haven't finished testing the below fully yet. So first they have rumors about factions and how they defend their territory. First couple traps are well telegraphed, and then after they experience some, the gloves are off. Having some traps that are already fired. Was it Tomb of the Iron God had that, where it had some pit traps, but the first at least 1 or 2 were open and obvious and triggered. And that's there to kind of let the players know, there are pit traps around, and kind of here's maybe what to look for. And then after that, you had more pit traps, which I think is also kind of a fun thing. And it also kind of makes sense that maybe the traps that are closer to your entrances get triggered, whereas ones deeper in, maybe they're not. So you can have a lot of fun with it. In fact, I think in that Tomb of the Iron, I think it was Tomb of the Iron God, but I might be off on the name. There was actually a hidden passage from the bottom of one of those pit traps, so that if you went down and explored that, you kind of had a shortcut to another part of the dungeon, which was a clever use of the trap and a clever place to put a secret passage. So, fun. Okay, so that was that. Let's see. This is from Horizonto 6. Tips, house rules for OSC, for combat OSC. Do you have any tips or house rules for combat? I really hate these house rules questions. Just because unless you're asking for the context around someone's house rules, what does it do for you? You don't know what they're trying to solve for. You're just lumping stuff in. And the next thing's even funnier. I'm very satisfied with the combat system. It's very simple and evocative. So if you love it, why are you trying to house rule it? Why are we always looking to just find ways to change things? If you're happy with it, leave it alone. While attack rolls often result in quote-unquote misses, I interpret the D20 results to bring the narrative to life and evolve the environment. This is also easy for players to understand, and I encourage them to interact with the environment to resolve combat situations and gain bonuses. However, I've noticed that during certain bigger fights, with numbers like against 10 gnolls and their leader, there are some intense moments, but the combat can drag on. At some point, both sides might start repeatedly missing their rolls, especially after the players and enemies have tried all their strategies, ambushes, etc., and rely on straightforward attacks to end the fight. This can flatten the rhythm of the game session. What do you think? So I feel like I mentioned this. Don't have them. Once you've got to this stalemate, then you can acknowledge, both sides can acknowledge that they're in a stalemate. I mean, again, when you've hit that stalemate, like, geez, I'm not going to win, you're not going to win, or I don't know, like neither one of us is going to win, or it's going to be a really pyrrhic victory because we're going to have to slaughter almost all of us to slaughter almost all of you. So what do? Use that as a pivot point for figuring out a new strategy. Do we retreat? if we haven't sounded alarms, do we sound an alarm? Do we try to make a truce? Do we try to do like a, hey, let's talk about this kind of thing? Do that. You don't have to keep fighting. You don't have to keep fighting. So don't. You know, the gnolls know full well, since they're not hitting, and they also know they're not being hit, and so does the party. So I know when I've seen those fights where we're getting there and it's like, oh man, we both need the same kind of thing to hit, and we're not hitting it, and it's just like bang, 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 bang. Like, hey man, can we talk about this? You know? So use that. I know. I mean, I'm not averse to tweaking out your combat, tweaking your combat, but this is one where I don't think that you can. I mean, sure, you could probably think, oh, you could put escalation dice, you can do other things, but I almost think you're going to get more interesting results if you just look at it and say, it's been a couple of turns or rounds of combat and nobody's hitting each other. What do these guys do? And just think of it that way, because in the fiction, it's the same as the meta thing. Like we're not making headway. So what do we do? Christopher asked what the escalation die. So the escalation die, I forget which game introduced it in, but basically it's almost like a reverse usage die. Not really. In combat, you might start with your escalation die at 0 or 1, and then every round it will go up. And then basically that adds, I think different systems or different games have done it differently, and you could do what you want with it. But then basically it adds a modifier to everyone's kind of attack bonuses. So it just makes sure combat gets more deadly as you go up. So you might get up to, and I think you could use different dice. Some of them, if it gets up to, say, if you're using a 6-sided die and it reaches 6, it might just sit at 6. Sometimes, I know I've seen it where some people will roll it back to 1, but basically, it's escalating. So you might start off as, say, 0, then it's +1 to your attack, then +2 to your attack, then +3, +4, +5, +6. So chances are, when you get up to +4, +5, or 6, harder to miss. So that kind of, the idea is that you're gonna do. But I think at the same time that's going to make people more likely just to sit in the fight. Whereas what I would say is use the stalemate as an opportunity to do something else, to try something else. So that's where I would sit with that. Okay, where are we at? Almost the hour. So let's see if there's one. We got something more. Well, here I can't. How can I pass this one up? From _Mysterion. Hex crawl rules idea. I'm working on creating a hack with some of my own rules, and some feedback would be helpful. I've been comparing many hex crawl rules, but I'm considering going in another direction. Here's what I'm exploring. Hex 6 miles. Watches morning, afternoon, evening. Hex options per watch, travel or explore. Traveling to a known point within a hex equals 1 watch and results in 1 encounter or event. All right, I'll say roll a d8 to determine when in the watch the encounter occurs, and then there's a note. I realize this seems long, but it could account for players not leaving immediately after the watch begins. All right, so just granted how long a watch is. Exploring within a hex equals 1 watch and results in 1 encounter, discovery, or event. Moving to a new hex can only be done after a night's rest. Difficult weather or terrain may cause players to add fatigue. I don't know. That's a long time for a watch. I don't like the idea that you absolutely get something. And it doesn't really matter. Like exploring, let's see, hold on. So if you just traveling somewhere, you're definitely getting an encounter, an event. And then if you're exploring, you get an encounter, a discovery, or an event. So basically, if you're just traveling, it's kind of like you've already made the discovery. So I see how they take that off. Though I guess if you're traveling to a known point, you're taking a route you already know. So you're not seeing anything new. That's fair, but I don't know. I don't like the idea of something happening everything you do. It's going to turn into a slog. I think it's going to turn into a slog, and it's a long one in terms of time because every one of those is 8 hours. So you're only kind of getting to do one of those. I don't know why you'd want to say it can only be done after a night's rest, but you're also using a full 8 hours. So I think it's just too long, and I don't like things that are like you're absolutely going to get something, especially when you're not making much decisions in the space. So fatigue is okay. Yeah, I don't know. Not my favorite, but everyone's tables are different, and I'm just spitballing off the top of my head. Well, let's see this one, another hex crawling one. This one's by Hot Dash Opening 9529, making a rolled hexcrawl map while story goes. Does anyone know of a way of creating the biome structures and stuff on hexcrawl as the characters discover the places? A way of rolling it that doesn't end up with very weird, unnatural maps. I have plenty of ways. I mean, you can use, my hex crawling, my map thing, which is currently free. Joy of Hex Maps. Can do that. There are lots of methods to do that. That's fine. Absolutely fine. Yes. But just remember, you got to give yourself time to whatever amount of either create the tables so that you get the prep to get the things the way you want it, right? Because you're going to be rolling. You'll need to roll a couple of things to put it all together. So just give yourself the time and space to get ready or get those hexes ready or however you want to do it. But yes, the answer is yes. All right, last one, probably. From Ryan Lance, author. Using random encounter tables. I'm running a level-capped first edition Pathfinder game in a Black Marsh sandbox by Bat in the Attic. Doing some game prep right now. My desire is to give the campaign some of that old school vibe. When you make a random table for hex map exploration, how do you reconcile your desire for verisimilitude with your desire for a random table that's based on the location rather than on the party's level? So verisimilitude, I'm not sure how those two are intersecting in that way. You desire for, so you want to give them sort of a spectrum, but you want it based on the location. But I mean, how tightly based are you talking about? Because, if you're saying you're in the woods, there's still all kinds of woods, all kinds of stuff. Or are you talking about based on location? Like, no, you're in this little hectare of woods, so only a few things that are in this hectare of woods are here? I'm not sure. So let's keep reading. My thinking is that a first level adventuring party won't necessarily look much different than a 6th level party. Enemies will default to treating any adventuring party in their territory as having a potentially high level of power or as uninteresting as they're not a food source. I don't think that's true. I think in games, in these kinds of systems, your 6th level party is going to look different. I absolutely think they will. And you could just look at it by just grabbing your average 6th level party from, go read a play-by-post, go grab out the makeup and of a 6th level party with all their hirelings and retainers and other stuff and their gear versus your 1st level party where there's maybe 1 or 2 people in plate depending on the thing and not a lot of retainers and other stuff. I actually think they do look differently. Now maybe some folks, I guess you could make some decisions on how much different they look, but I would absolutely disagree that they look the same. Krister says, if you think of verisimilitude as realism, I get his point. It's not realistic for the monsters to all be appropriate level for the party. Well, that's true. Yes. I guess, yes. I guess he's coming from Pathfinder, right? So Pathfinder, you're getting into the kind of balance. You're in the sort of balanced city, so to speak. Okay. I might roll a check of dire wolves. Those dire wolves may ignore or avoid a 1st level party. I don't think they would. I mean, I think that they would. I feel like animals would get a sense. I even, like I said, I disagree with that. I disagree with the 1st level versus 6th level spiel. For the most part, there might be some. Certainly, a 6th level party could go kind of undercover and try to dress down to look like a 1st level party. But I don't think many people would confuse a 1st level fighter with a 6th level fighter. Humanoids in the setting have a culture of hospitality because of the belief in the common occurrence of dragons and avatars appearing as noble humans. It would be on the party to simultaneously dispel their own mystique while betraying their low power level to potential enemy that would otherwise pass them by. The combination of cultures and shyness and even powerful creatures on the encounter tables protect the party from getting wiped out just because they rolled something they couldn't take for another 16 sessions. Well, I think the other thing is distance and reactions. I rolled, my players were 2nd level, and I rolled the dragons twice. Like, it wasn't in the same session though, might have been. And just distances and reactions, they were able to, they were able to play and not just be eaten up or destroyed or breath weaponed on, and it was fun. Now, obviously, you could roll obviously, there is a chance that you could roll a really poor reaction and a really close distance, in which case they would have been foobarred. In my case, it didn't happen. If you don't want that to happen, then maybe don't have the dragons on the board, or you can have them do something like the 2nd dragon did. Though I think in my case, they had a pretty, not super hostile, but they basically geshed the party and forced them to go on a quest. So you can always do that, right? The powerful creatures that are, especially ones that are intelligent, they'll capture the party, use them as pawns, uh, bargain, sell them back, take them as hostages to be ransomed. All kinds of ways you can deal with that, other than just they come in and kill. Secondary question: how do you decide how many monsters appear? Do you prefer to pick based on what would make a fun encounter? No. Based on your party? No. Or do you have a way of rolling? Yes. And I usually just go by, just go by the book. Though I suppose if you're rolling totally, you kind of gotta make up your own if you're doing it. But BX and AD&D and OD&D, they all have numbers attached. For example, a monster can appear solitary, in a pair, or in a gang of 3 to 8. It comes up in a random table, but you still have to decide how many there are. I was thinking that in general, 75% of the time it's solo, 20% of the time in a pair, 5% of the time it's the largest group. What would you do? Well, I would just take, was this 3 to 8, just say, maybe just do 3d6 minus 1 or whatever. Maybe, 3d6 minus 1. No, sorry. No, it's not my 3d6. Like 3 or like 2d4 plus 1 maybe, or 2d4, and then you can even have 2d4 minus 1, so you get 1 to 7, so you could potentially get a 7 and you could potentially get a 1. That's what I would do. Just use it, let the dice figure it out. But I don't think there's a problem with doing it that way too. If you have some numbers like, it's this, that, or the other, do a 75, 20, and 5. Totally fine. That's basically, you would have a 3, 3 and 6, 2 and 6, 1 and 6. You could put that easily on a d6 table, and blam. There you go. And lastly, a third question: how common are random encounters? I roll once daily, 1d6 when an encounter happening only in a 6, so these encounters are pretty rare overall. Yeah, I like to use 1 or 2 or 3. I basically follow the terrain guidelines in BX, though now that I kind of have my own systems, I follow that. But yeah, in general, it's all good. If that's, the rarity of your encounters is gonna flavor how many things there seem going on. So if you're rolling once a day, 1 in 6 chance, it's gonna feel very sparse and lonesome and almost quiet, right? If you're rolling once every 3 hours, chances are it's going to get more encounters, so it's going to feel busier. And so I think you have fun with that and play around with, this, you're in a woods that's, you want to say, or some hills that are desolate. So there's some really nasty encounters, but they hardly ever show up because there's just so much area and so few things. Or it could be a wood that's pretty heavily populated, but maybe it's not super dangerous. Or maybe it's dangerous because of the numbers and not the kind of thing. So you can have a lot of fun modulating those numbers. Whew. All right, folks. I'm glad to be back at this. As usual, I would prefer for you guys to send me stuff, and then I could read that, as opposed to reading the stuff of strangers. But I'll do with what I can. Like I said before, I'll be at Page tomorrow, which is the Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo, right outside Philadelphia. So if you're in the Northeast corridor and you're going to be at Page, look for me from the east. And I should have a little something to give away. So if you find me, if I haven't run out, ask me and I'll give it to you. Like I said, if I haven't run out. Last time I couldn't, it gave me I had a hard time giving things away. So we'll see how this does. Other than that, folks, have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Whew, game on, everybody. Talk to you later. Bye now.